All right, we're gonna talk about it. This is documentation. I was just watching this video about, the feminization of society and um, which could described as, we've had enough time with this experiment with documentable results, and people want to give more care, and empathy and compassion, or the guise of it, because absolute power corrupts absolutely. So we got two polarities. We was largely on this side initially, and then because of manipulations, or just the other side, feminine energy, deciding like, oh, I don't like the way they're doing that, and them coming to power through policy and processes, it's swayed to the other side. And we're speaking strictly in the Western world as of now, because as a tribal being, there's a different modus of how things and communal decisions are made. But we have kind of had to abandon that in order to participate in the Western world, based on genocides and all of these things that have removed that order. But taking certain pieces, but then remove that council aspect of the ones that know and see to the table. And it's become more of a, we went through the tyrannical, we went through the empirical, we went through all of these things to where it was like totalitarian, or like one single ruler, and then count their advisors, and then they're trickle down of that, and then the population. So where we're at now, you have to kind of like go through the whole their story to get to this point, and be informed on that, to not necessarily just speak in a way that would kind of like, because you don't want to burn either side, because the goal is harmony. The goal is always harmony. But true leadership is more selfless than it is self-serving. And I feel like a lot of, I was watching this video and they was talking about the feminization of society, and how like all the women in the workplace and HR departments and all this stuff, and how it's been a backlash against masculinity, which I agree. But my masculinity is not the masculinity of the European regime, that has also been in charge of using police to brutalize my people and section us into micro communities that are then, economically handicapped, and etc. So it's a nuanced conversation, because I feel like masculinity is required, but the masculinity of today is largely the masculinity that they're referring to when they say patriarchy is more so a, it's like what the European man and the European woman went through. And then that in media is informed, in the 50s and the 60s, all these movies, that's what became the standard, Mad Men and all this. And then everybody saw that and was like, oh, that's how all men are. And some niggas who didn't have their own awareness emulated that, because in the workplace they were trying to succeed. So then they became more like arrogant and like dismissive. You know what I mean? So we got to track all of this. And when I say masculinity in the positive, I'm talking about, it's not always the most like brolic and just like shadow casting over everything and get with it or get lost. It's more so like, I know I have a life experience that is proven, and I have this data, and I can definitely, and this empathy and this spirit. So it's like a chief. It's more so like spiritual, balanced, with real-time abilities to ascertain, discern, you know what I mean, what's going on. And the willingness to consult with all qualified parties in order to find a more holistic decision on what's best for this group of people, from top to bottom, or from left to right, in to out. So, but I feel like what's going on right now is women's running shit. You know, they cracking the whip on niggas. They want to see niggas suffer. You know what I mean? And that goes back to even the queen. It comes over here via the queen because she sent her men over here. And I'm speaking as a native. She sent her men over here to conquest with by any means necessary. So her proclivities to want silk and myrrhs and all this, you know, spices and, you know, fashionable garments that you must source from the land and all this stuff, that has led us to this point in society today where it's like, kill him, I don't care, get him the fuck out of here, I just need my charcuterie, you know what I mean? And that mentality has brought us once again here. And so we would have to remove that or recalibrate that. And that is the one who did like feminism ruling and all that. It's kind of like a Karen in office that was just like so angry at her man who is a European or a, you know, in that realm, you know what I mean? She's so angry at him that she is whipping everybody and using him as a eunuch or a slave, and then he's resentful. So they're going through their own thing. But because they were in the positions of power based on gunfire and destruction, and I'm just being honest, that trickled down to everybody. So you got niggas in their own communities, negus in their own communities, emulating that shit with their women and wondering why it's not working out, and they're clashing because it's like, that's not our vibe. That's not even how we're supposed to get down genetically, that spiritually. We have, the spirit is with us. It speaks to us, but people have numbed themselves out, disavowed, you know, having to go to war with them in the workplace to have anything over the course of time has kind of grinded it down to where they're not as groovy. We're not as groovy. And we are having to keep up with Joneses and play these games and like wear the conch and like put the suit on and, you know, do these things that was not necessarily traditionally us in order to demonstrate I'm a free man in their Eurocentric beauty standard or like well-adjusted standards. So the women have to acknowledge that, as far as, and I'm speaking only for us as a community, and we are the leaders because we was here first, and that's just the facts. So first off, the leadership would be best restored in the hands of the people who care about everybody naturally. And then from there, whether it's man or woman or a council of both, it would need to be, or even from, you know, there are people of all cultures who have this awareness of what soul is now because it's been demonstrated enough in a public forum. So there's people who know what the fuck right and wrong is. And in any given situation, you know, because it's relative, but then there's also an overlying inalienable truth for the moment based on maximum benefit and longevity. So I believe you know, and feel, because I'm in tune with the heart and the emotions, that the women that are running shit right now, it's like, if y'all want to be in power because you either resentful or whatever, then that's like with a bad compass, because you're not going to be thinking as a holistically, you're going to be thinking tyrannically, much like the queen was, or the empress, who, you know, they're battling, catfight, you know, China, Europe, battling, dominating land, trying to gather up as many resources as they can, you know what I mean? And in the process, the brown people are gold, pretty much. So it's like, I want the most gold, and I need to enslave these people mentally, spiritually, physically, in order to prisons and all that, institutions, in order to get them to serve my purpose, because where they go, society goes, because the earth speaks to them first. So we need to control them through media or whatever. But that mentality is always going to bring us down, because you're projecting your insecurity / desire for dominance onto the people who are actually the leaders. And, you know, you get your opportunity. That's the thing about this sim, is like, motherfuckers want their chance to run shit, then they get their chance to run shit over the course of time, and we see how it plays out. But I've seen how it plays out. We've seen how it plays out. And from the inception, it was a bad taste. You know what I mean? It was in poor taste the way that it happened. It wasn't an election. It was a destruction, you know? It was a sneaky poisoning in order to eliminate the leaders that were already there. As opposed to working together with the leaders that were already there, they murdered them, you know what I mean? So it's like, y'all kind of took it without your time. So we were off balance from there, and then we just been kind of like plugging holes in the hole to try to keep the ship afloat, generation after generation after generation. New policies, put money on top of money, on top of money, on top of death, on top of, and that's where we're at. So it's like all these negative spirits are sewn into the fabric of this modality or methodology of function of how society is moving and who's getting chosen, nepotism and all these things. So there's people who are flawed who want to stay in, people who are inadequate who want to stay in their podium, so they keep putting more inadequate people under them to make sure that they don't get thrown off, and it just keeps, you know, the foundation is shaky. But yeah, the women, I feel like if they want to be in power, it's cool. But if you want to be a leader, you gotta also be selfless in that way, and not selfless in the way of like, oh, I'm gonna have children and just blow my own ego up and make sure that I take care of them. Because your children are gonna be another you, and you haven't learned your lesson yet. As far as spiritually, if you're gonna be the leader, and I'm gonna just get down to the as a person who's experienced the trail, and I've been on the trail for so long, and by trail I mean being outside without the safety and security of full home structure, you know what I mean? Unless it's under the roof of a woman, or when I had my own spot, people broke in and, you know, just destroyed my safety, feelings of safety and comfort, which to me is also indicative of the inception point of like, this is your land, give me that shit, because I don't want you to have comfort. I want to be in charge of you so that I can funnel you into my institutions. They do that systematically in this society to people like myself who are divine masculine sovereign beings, because they need to learn from me, but they don't want to give me the podium to be the leader, because then I will change things for the better, but in their eyes, they'll be eliminated from the ability to drive the BMW and talk big shit, you know, and eat big steaks and all that. That's a pathology or a mentality that they, you know, comes from the scarcity of their culture's inception point. Not to say it's true, but what you believe kind of determines your actions, and blah, 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 blah from there. So my experience is more so like, I'm a great leader and people like me are great leaders, and there's women that are great leaders, but a lot of times it's a melanated or perspective at the very least, which is abundance first, and we can work it out. You know what I mean? Let's talk about it versus this is what I want, I don't care. Kill everybody, I just want it. You know what I mean? That's a scarcity mindset, and that's what's running the world right now. So the scarcity mindset that's running the world right now is women coming to power through legislatures and, you know, movements where they eliminate key pieces and components in institutions, which I don't necessarily mind, because those motherfuckers kind of wanted to kill me anyway. But at the same time, when they get there, they're not necessarily changing the mind of the people or the media or whatever. It's changing in the way of like, well, masculinity is bad, toxic, you know, like all men are this and that. And it's like, most of those women have not even met a man like myself or a divine masculine that's actually like experienced in the grit of this reality, not a privileged motherfucker that's just arrogant. You know, they're so used to those people because it's still coming from the overseas who came here to conquer on behalf of the queen. It's the same archetype. So in their minds, they met men and they're smarter than men and blah, blah, blah. But those are the men that was empowered because they were manipulable. So you have to first acknowledge that the real men is actually not even, I'm not going to dismiss them. I'm going to say the more suitable leaders are in the shadows, working on spiritual matters, and those are the ones that I believe would be appointed that could implement a change that would trickle down and change the world. That's, just like you project all your insecurities onto us because our melanin is the LCD screen that manifests the reality. If you keep dominating a melanated community and they see you as a dominant force, then you'll be a dominant force in the economy, and it's cause and effect. And that's why they continue to do it in gang stalk and all this stuff. Is like, I gotta make sure you see me as the dominant thing, And if you walk in the grocery store, they're gonna chirp and say all this stuff and try to. Women do this a lot. And what I experience, and when I say this, I mean like European women and the pale woman, the one that's the Karen, you know what I mean? They'll just start laughing out loud and trying to dominate the space, even if what they're talking about is not as relevant or important to this war that we're going through or the pain and suffering that everybody's feeling. They will just be so outspoken, and that's their defense mechanism / offense in order to control the narrative. Controlling the narrative is the weapon of the physically not as strong, you know what I mean? And that's just genetics. It's not about you're weak. It's more so just about you fight wars differently. And that does not necessarily benefit everybody when you're continuing to like echo that behavior pattern because the insecurity you feel when a true one shows up and you're like, damn, I can't phase him, but I have to just own this moment so much that he can't even have his own. Or she, you know what I mean? Because, sisters, shout out to the sisters. I'm sure we go through this, but then y'all, in order to participate in the European economic structure, have to kind of separate yourself from us and demonstrate that in the public forum in order to win kudos and favor. So they would point the few that do into the HR, and then they just have a pale mind. So it's not necessarily about the tone. Skin tone is more like, because you got brown bodies with pale minds, you know what I mean? It's about the mind. And that's not something that you could just say men or women. It's a man, no, it's a woman. It's like you got to analyze, you got to like get the information of who they are and what they believe. And that's not something you could get on an application or in a suit and sitting in a chair making a decision based on a credit score, because society is fundamentally flawed in that way of nepotism and putting weak people in power because the person that they don't want their predecessor to be stronger than them, because this is inadequacy. Remember, the need to control is a feeling of inadequacy. So if we're talking about leadership, there's a selflessness that's involved. If we're talking about how we can improve as a society as a whole with all races and all that, there's still a hierarchy of who has the oldest spirit, who's the oldest soul, and that wisdom is the wisdom of the elder that will lead. You know what I mean? And until that happens, it's not gonna work, in my opinion and intuition, because it's always gonna be somebody getting into power based on their insecurities and the need to fight and claw and scratch, because the motherfucker just has to be the one to be able to have the Gucci on. They're going to sacrifice everybody in their path to get there. So then when they get there, they feel like untouchable and infallible because nobody's going to check them because they got the gavel. You know what I mean? But, women are running shit now. When I go in these places and I see, and I'm doing deliveries in all these towns, women are yucking it up, laughing, even if they're projecting and pretending, because I see them online like, I'm alone, I'm tired of this being in charge shit, I don't have nobody, when in actuality this is step one of being a leader. You got the podium now, so you can kind of pick the men that you believe based on their internal. You could pick certain men with your power that you have now and build a new podium. But you only are still looking for the men who are successful by the Eurocentric standard and expecting them to love you or expecting them to have the capacity to really like be on the one with you. But they're resentful because they had the insecurity that made them want to dominate the whole world back then anyway. The pale mind, you know what I mean? So it's a system that has to be recalibrated first. But if you in power right now, you have to, in order to be a leader, sacrifice that perfection because it's ugly times that we're in. You have to sacrifice that perfection. I've been with enough women to like speak on this too. I'm not like some incel ass nigga I'm just kind of abstaining because I see the fallacies. So you have to kind of be in heart space in order to be a leader. And that is like, I'm in charge, just like Pretty Woman, just like a nigga, you know what I mean? We'll go with an example everybody knows. Just like niggas dominate. He sees the woman he likes, and he's like, come on, you know what I mean? We'll build it together. I got most of it already. All you got to do is be the heart or the spirit or the mind, whatever. Or the heart, the spirit, whatever he's not balanced in, she would represent that. So when y'all got all the economic shit going right now because the policies is in your favor, whatever your race, whatever your creed, culture, you would benefit going forward for decades to come by finding a man that is a true representation of spirituality and love versus just, oh, he got as much money as me. Because 9 times out of 10, them niggas has had to be homosexual to get it if they're in any position of like genetic dominance. They're gonna subjugate him in order for him to get there. They're gonna emasculate him in order for him to get there, because the people who were there when he showed up to try to achieve was resentful, and that was like, well, I'll let you get some of this money, but nigga, bend over, or you know what I mean, sacrifice somebody, you know what I mean, like, so they're already spiritually dead, lightweight by the time they get there. So y'all are meeting on the same level economically, but spiritually, neither one of y'all is in line. The spirit is outside of the institution and the economy. So if we want to actually move forward and have harmonious and evolved relationships, I think a woman is going to have to give a nigga the house key, you know? Women got to be comfortable with finding a nigga and knowing that the money is not the sign of masculinity or dominance, because we all know, if you know, you know that this system was not built on true masculine values. This system is built on terraforming nature in order to achieve your result, in regardless to the detriment. Because look at the forest getting cut down. Look at all these resources getting drained from the earth. These are all fundamental parts of the industries that we participate in. And technology and all of that is based on natural resources being removed from their land and then implemented in other ways, whether it be humans, whether it be elements, whether it be mentalities, you know what I mean? Like, put the nigga in the basement, make him do some dope shit, and we'll take that and sell that, you know, while he's down there starving. But, or they working in the factory, sewing it together 15 hours a day, breathing in bullshit, but we got multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar corporations off of that. That's natural resources being reallocated. And it doesn't benefit the nature to the most part. That's why we're experiencing all these backlash, and nature's fucking niggas up, fucking shit up, you know what I mean? A lot of times when I say niggas, I mean men and women, you know. Niggas is like a mentality. But sometimes it's, you know, you just gotta know. But I'm working on my own accountabilities, you know what I mean? I think that's the thing. We all gotta hold ourselves accountable first and foremost. And in my travels, I'm aware that I've been held back in certain situations based on being overqualified, because it's like, we damn sure don't want him coming in here making us look bad. So then how am I supposed to be as successful as the people who are setting the tone of what success is, when they decided that was what success is, and set it up as a gauntlet in order to put the distance between themselves and me, so they were more suitable for the Karen to choose them, you know, back in the days when it was like, oh, fair maiden, I've come from blah, blah, blah. And then, you know, she's looking over at the Native Americans hooping and being like, well, damn, what's going on over there? So then that nigga's like, man, bomb the basketball court, get them the fuck out of here. You know what I mean? Sodomize all of them, you know what I mean? And that's his revenge. And then that led to where we're at today. And she saw that, and then she's like, yeah, he will do all of this for my love. So, well, I want this and I want that. And over there they have, the fig trees, and I want fig for breakfast. And then he was like, all right, well, we need to own the fig trees. So all of you get the fuck out of here. We put the gate around the fig trees, and now we are selling fig Newtons. You know what I mean? This is people don't want to acknowledge the truth of this reality, and that's why we suffer, because we perish for lack of knowledge. And if somebody gives you the truth, it's on you from there to move accordingly. But a lot of the realest MFers in society are not the most successful in the Western sense, because the whole system was built on a person's need to dominate the dominant. I mean, and by dominant on the second iteration, I mean just naturally gifted by the spirit. And that's what it is. Because my birthright is to lead, you know what I mean? But my birthright is to lead and know and have the sustainability to go forth and bear fruits, in a natural way without harming in order to achieve it. But the other part had to be more barbaric in order to sustain, because of their terrain and their inception point, and their genetic makeup. And it's all respect to all parties. We all have functionalities, but when we make it about $1, it dehumanizes everybody. So it dehumanizes everybody that needs the dollar. And some people don't need the dollar because they have so much natural resources that they've claimed that the dollar is just their method of enslaving everybody else, because they put everybody in every country on the fiat currency system. So this is hundreds of years in the making, and nobody wants to acknowledge that. They think it's just like, well, how I'm feeling today is how it goes. It's like, no, you got a whole ancestral lineage to acknowledge in order to fix it. If you want to fix it, I don't think a lot of people want to fix it. They just want everybody else to shut up and let them be in charge. But it's like, there's other suitable leaders that's outside going through it, and communities being decimated. And if the people in charge, in power, don't acknowledge that, they ain't go to the hood, they ain't really seeing what's going on with these people that have beautiful stories and foundations and abilities to heal and build. They don't care about that. It's just like, nigga, y'all are great workers. And that's almost like a Freudian slip, or that's almost like a response to, I hate you, I love you, but I hate you, so I'm gonna punish you for being something that I can't take my attention away from. And that's what I believe that a lot of today's women are doing in institutions. Is like, fuck all this, we're gonna give all the jobs. Just like culturally is like, HR is Asian, they're gonna hire more Asian people. They have a little bit more balance of masculine and feminine, so they kind of like stick together. But then in like Eurocentrism and all of that is like men, you know what I mean? So they was like, fuck that, I'm hiring all bros. And then when the women are responding to that on a pale mind frame, they're like, well, we're hiring all ladies or all women, you know what I mean? Because ladies is a specific level of discernment and like morals and values. So I don't know if I'm gonna give all of y'all that, but there's a specific response that's coming from a closed heart. From, they might have gotten abused or felt neglected by their men, and now they're in positions of power. So they'll elect women based on all races, but they have to have the pale mind or be a model citizen. So now that's what's the platform right now. And they are punishing the men, punishing anything that they deem as masculine, which is like, well, all y'all niggas is doing construction. All you can do is factory work. All you can do is gig work. All you can do is all the most like, you could be a janitor, all this stuff they don't want your mind involved, because then they would have to acknowledge that, oh, there's, or the feminized ones that are showing up like, yes, bitch, you know what I mean? They want that. They're comfortable with that because it keeps them cozy. They don't have to acknowledge, anything else. It could come from trauma, but at the same time, it doesn't make it right. You got to work on that. You got to do your shadow work, or we're going to continue to deteriorate. and be like homogenized into infinitum into we're all AI. Because it's like you only have these responses in any given point because you're making me uncomfortable by asking too many questions. So it's not, I just, the leadership has to be holistic and from a heart space and not no woke woo woo shit. I'm just saying, like, you got to know war, you have to know spirit, you have to know nature, you have to know economy, you have to know men and women psychologically and not emotionally, not just emotionally. And you know, when a man shows up that's wise and like intelligent, that's not the same man as the one that you have resentment for, because a wise, intelligent man is not necessarily, is not, intelligence in itself is 360 degrees. So pulling from that, he's not trying to dominate you. He is trying to find the balance. You know what I mean? Most of the people you see as dominant, they're not intelligent. They are just willing to fuck everything up in order to have their way. And that's what you're responding to when you're like, oh, patriarchy, oh, toxic, oh, you know what I mean? Which I could respect to the degree that I respect it. But knowing me and the people that I know and have met along the way, there's a whole sector of men. We're usually in the artisan community or these places because everybody's more balanced in that environment. So I feel like you need to work with those people, dominant women, hierarchical women right now, caring, top-notch, Fortune 500, CLK, whatever drivers, 4-bedroom owner, whatever, all this stuff you're bragging about that doesn't make life really like, oh, I did, I'm so happy on my deathbed. All that stuff is cool, but it returns to ashes. True connection and true love and true passion is what makes the babies better. So we're trying to evolve, and not perish like the Babylonian, like the Egypt, not the Romans, like all this super decadence to the detriment of the civilization, because these 15 people up here is having orgies and on caviar and all this. That's cool, but it's not gonna work in the long run, and it happens every time we get to that silk shoe or whatever it's called, and it just, you know what I mean? Because it's unsustainable. It's not solid enough. You know what I mean? Because the goo, I ain't disrespecting the goo. The goo is the foundation. So the goo is under all of this. Like, what the fuck is y'all doing? You know what I mean? The goo is like this. It's all it is. But we're up here rigid, but we don't have a solid foundation. So this shit just breaks every time because it's too top heavy. But yeah, women, if I'm talking directly to women that are in power, I feel like y'all got to start choosing real motherfuckers to get with and be with and appreciating what makes a man. And it's not money. It's never been money. Money was established from people who were not masculine and resented masculinity, and they used that to control the narrative. And that's the truth. Spoken from a real native who existed spiritually in essence before money even was here. My woman loved me on the land. We was on the land. We did what we had to do. If we had to kill a bison or something to survive, we did it, but it wasn't about money. We traded for what we needed. Nobody was necessarily stunting on anybody else. And that's when we was in the best relationships. Facts. Any relationship I had with a woman, when it wasn't about money, we lasted longer. But when she was focused on college degrees and going to fashion school and all that, we had good relationships for a period of time, but then other people's opinions got into it, because when you go into those institutions, polite society judges you, and people conform to polite society for social credit scores. And that's how it goes. And if you disagree with me, we could talk about it. But I've been very experienced in being outside of the norm, and that's where you see the perspective, because I was the third perspective. I wasn't polarity. And that gives me the perspective on them too and me. So, and by me, I mean us. And by us, I mean men, you know what I mean? Who have morals and are not willing to sacrifice everything for a little bit of nothing in the grand scheme of what this experience is. So it's not even a diss, it's just like somebody got to talk to y'all with some sauce and not just reading a chat GPT prompt on statistics that just hollow and makes it like, well, you know, if one of the people you resent is online being like, well, women are feminizing society, you're gonna be like, well, fuck him, talk, you know what I mean? But if you're looking at somebody who's actually been with y'all and like cared and like, you know, we've held each other and talked through some shit where you was crying and then we got over it instead of me just storming out, you know. I've stormed out before when somebody, you know, she called me jealous because she was like doing the shit test thing and I just wasn't having it and I was like, I'm out of here. Because you could see it coming when somebody's trying to like slowly chip away at you. And shame is a lot of the weapons that y'all use, and it doesn't yield good results. It just makes more bitch ass niggas, because the ones that will go through the shame are either slowly getting terraformed, like I said, or they are gonna resent you in the long run, and you know what I mean? They might abuse you, beat your ass or something because you shamed them so much that they're just like, but they're putting up with it because they want some pussy. But then they're going to dog you out, cheat on you or whatever in order to get their ego back right. So you're not going to get the results you want, and you're just going to keep cycling through, and that makes you more greedy, and that's the proof is in the pudding if you talk about greed. Shit ain't fun no more, you know what I mean? Shit ain't safe, you know what I mean? It's like if you have power, you will have the ability to kind of appoint. So if you're not appointing the right niggas, that's on you. You got to look at yourself and do the shadow work, which I don't think a lot of people want to do, because then they have to backtrack a little bit and downgrade a little bit in the economic sense, as far as like he might not be doing the best economically, but he has everything else. And if you just integrate him in, now he has the lens and perspective and access of you. So then you might have to come down here and then y'all could come up here. You know what I mean? But y'all don't want to come down here because your girlfriends, you know, or whatever, you know? So it's just about what you desire. And, you know, you got vibrators and you got all that shit, you know what I mean? But it's just making you more AI because you ain't getting that. The soul, you ain't getting that. And if you are, to the degree that you are, like a nigga who got some money and you gonna fuck with the nigga that because he got some money, you don't know what he had to do to get it. Because once again, the system is flawed. So niggas, you know, is doing bullshit to get the bread just to look good. And then dealing with their demons from that, or creeping on you to go be with this motherfucker, and you know that he got a male relationship that you don't know about, or you do know about it and you don't care because the money is what matters and the picture is what matters, and you know then the kids suffer. It's so like cyclical that it's like, to me it's an easy answer, but you know, culturally, if we're talking about brown on brown, black on, you know, native on native, it's just the truth, you know? What do you care about more? And, you know, I'm not necessarily judging you, but somebody is. And there is always the repercussions for these actions. It might take time, 7 years sim, we're gonna watch it play out. And then after the 7 years, I'm taking notes on all this. Well, you showed your ass in this way. You showed your ass in this way. So in the next version, these are the circumstances. Now you was doing your thing for 10 years, 15 years, and you was having it. You know what I mean? And top notch. And this is on both sides of the spectrum, or all sides of the spectrum. And then it's like, all right, well, you know, the great records keeper is like, okay, well, such as boom, 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 boom. I wager heart. I wager, you know, these are your actions. Now is the next chapter. Choom, and then it just like shit goes like this. And then it's just like, what the fuck? You know, and we think it's based on just the physical realm, but there's multiple dimensions and spiritual correspondences which is why it's important to have spirit and soul in your life and like pursue that. But yeah, I think that's just what's going on. And I watch these videos and I can agree with most of it or a lot of it. But then it's like the dude who's talking is like somebody who would not give me a position, a job. You know what I mean? I don't like to say job because Job, and then I think about like, you know what I mean? Like, so would not give me an opportunity. It's like I don't like resent economics, but the financial system, but I just know that it represents to a degree the death of my sovereignty from its inception point. So I have reservations, no pun intended, about using these words, you know what I mean? But in order to speak to y'all in terms that is widely understood, I'm gonna say a job. Nigga won't hire me because he's looking at me like this nigga will dunk on me, you know what I mean? And so what am I supposed to do? It just is what it is. I'm not about to take penitentiary chances in this level of society, you know. Back then it was a little bit more you could do something, but now it's like everybody's watching, cameras everywhere. They got people that are cameras. So that's out of the question, and that's how they get niggas in jail anyway. Motherfuckers in jail. So I just think it's going forward, that's the truth, and establishing the truth as it exists today is very important in order to move forward. So that's what I'm here to do. And I guess I've been on this walk so I can see the truth. And I'm thankful for that, Most High, you know. But yeah, when I see women, it's like, I don't know what you expect from people like myself. You're going to try to shame me for not wanting to approach you, but I know where your mind is at. And if you're really a leader, if you really empower, you should choose me. You should recognize me when you see me and those like me, and improve upon your life by putting somebody next to you that actually knows what's going on. And other than that, if not, it's just going to continue to spiral, and it's going to be back and forth between European views and Asian views and all this, and it's respect to all, but we're in the land that you know, if we was in Asia, when I say Asian, I don't even mean a diss. If we was in any of those countries, Odoyo rules, you know what I mean? Ming Dynasty, you know, it is what it is. Like, y'all know what's going on in this terrain, but even still, we was on all parts of the earth. So realistically, the melanin is the inception point of truth. And then everything else is like a little bit lesser version of that truth, which is why everybody's suffering everywhere that they're at, and they all come here to try to find some kind of peace of mind, because there's a larger population of us that's been here thugging, you know what I mean? Making hip hop, making soul music, jazz. The music is the modality. The medicine is the shaman, is the, you know, the Shah woman, you know, the medicine woman is here, and that's why they come here. But the guise is for opportunities in America. But you know what I mean? That's kind of like, depending on who you ask, what an opportunity really is, because they be tricking motherfuckers over here and then putting them in internment camps, or, you know, here's a scooter, do DoorDash, nigga. Here's a little visa to get you started, but now you homeless, and now we gonna take advantage of you. You can sell sperm, you can sell melanin, you can sell plasma. We need that melanin, so bring them from all over the world and get them here and make them economically think they about to come up, and then when they need to keep up with the Joneses, we'll provide opportunities for them to sell their body to us, so we can then take that, because it's still way back in the, it's still there's a group of people that's in charge, quote unquote, that's dictating everything and playing chess with cultures, you know what I mean? And if you don't see that, you're gonna get used as a pawn. So that's why it's important to have people around you that know what the fuck going on from a eternal perspective, because it's the same war playing out over and over and over again in different iterations. And if you want to not get chewed up and spit out with a BMW that you might have to end up sleeping in, or you know what I mean, or like a home that you in by yourself because you don't want to like love somebody, you know, it is what it is, and all more power to you. But I'm gonna say this for the last time: the realest motherfuckers are not the most economically successful 8 times out of 10, because that's just, the system was not built for meritocracy. It's built for nepotism. And, you know, me fortifying my palace by making sure there's so many layers of bridge trolls that you can't even get to me. You don't even know who I am. And I'm over here having everything. You know what I mean? That thing is the foundation of this, on top of the native, who is eternal and always, which is me, the trees, the birds, the bees, the streams, my G's, you know, the ladies. And yeah, I feel like it's a decision that needs to be made by those that have the power, because that is a privilege, and with that privilege is a responsibility. So it's in your hands, and you got a chance. It's your chance to lead. It's like, if you don't do it, it'll probably get taken from you, just like it got taken from them, just like it's unstable and falling apart on, you know, on every level. But yeah, we're gonna keep doing what we doing for sure, because those who know what it's really about, and just stick to the spiritual journey. The money will come in whatever fashion it is, whether it just be peace and tranquility, serenity, or, you know, the opportunities to relax and be around one cool person, or be by yourself and not have to deal with a bunch of bullshit and people trying to terraform your mentality on a day-to-day basis, to where you end up a hollow employee, or, you know, you end up a CEO, but you now ain't got nobody real around you, and you just a fake ass motherfucker that's always, you know, doing that thing where you just saying the list of AI commands in order to win the favor of people who don't even really like you. They just know you got the money. But it is what it is. Much love to everybody that's thugging out here, you know what I mean, through this period of time where we're seeing that it's uncertain and it's not something that you can rely on. And these motherfuckers is, you know, they will crack the whip in order to get everybody to bow down, you know, take all your privileges away just to prove that they're in control, you know, cause chaos. If you can't see what's going on, then you talk to somebody spiritual. That's all I got to say, really.